Thank you so much for coming. My name is Nicole Wandera. I am the artist right now in this room in my exhibition, Until We Meet Again. I'm very excited for having you here. I'd like to thank Hillyer for hosting me and this amazing opportunity. And also all the other artists who came before and are currently in the show. Definitely check out their work, it's amazing. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm also here with my two best friends, Imani and Imara. You say hi? Hi. They're so shy. They're my twins. You can see them throughout the work. They're heavily featured. Well, I am from Nairobi, Kenya, but I am based in Fairfax, Virginia. I have been an artist my whole life, but I have been practicing professionally for like 10 years. Started my education at the Pratt Institute and completed it at Virginia Commonwealth University. Most of my work is acrylic and mixed media with a little bit of technology sprinkled here and there. I like to push my medium. And yeah, I'm very excited to be showing you the work. So just a little bit, I want this to be like a discussion too. So feel free to like ask questions if something piques your interest and you're, want to just know more about it. So the curation of the piece, even though it's called Until We Meet Again, how it's being placed is not in chronological order. So if that's what you're looking for, was not intention. How it's placed is that every piece kind of is opposing each other in a discussion, a meeting of sorts. So why the title Until We Meet Again? Basically, this work in this room, some of it was made during this year, some of it was made in the past, but a lot of my work is based on my perspective and the journey through life. And I was thinking about the cyclical nature of life, how as we grow and as we evolve, we sort of have the same lessons. We have the same moments and experiences that teach us and help us evolve into be better versions of ourselves. And I feel, especially as a mother, I was a very young mother. I'm still a young mother. I got my kids when I was 21 in college. So much fun. But I feel like I got the amazing opportunity as a mother to look back at my life, because now I am sort of repeating those lessons again towards the next generation. And so within all those things, looking at love, hope, fears, past relationships, anxieties I have as a mother, and the future. What does the future entail? I know for me personally, these days the future is not as bright as it's supposed to be, but yeah, the great thing about watching children grow is that I'm sort of relearning those lessons through them. And it's the same as creating work. They're like the never-ending piece. And as I'm working, as I'm crafting, as I'm trying to put this visual story together, I'm looking at those lessons as a source. So I'm going to just start pointing out and talking about the pieces as they arranged. So the first thing, as I talked about, was motherhood. That's a very huge key thing in my life. And my family, I'm African. We are very much a matriarchal family. The women are the ones who really do, make all the decisions in the family. If there's a death, if there's sadness, they're the ones who will come together, raise the money. If there's a party, there's a celebration, they're the ones who are going to arrange everything. If somebody's having a child, there's a whole ceremony that comes with bringing new life and adding a member to the family. So I'd like to start with this piece over here, the matriarchs. So the figures in the matriarchs, they were actually a family I ran into in New York. I was just walking in the park and I saw this amazing, beautiful little family, and it was a whole generation. It was obviously the new mom, the baby girl, and the grandma. And I just felt there's a spirit around them. Something drew me to them. And I was like, can I take a picture? They were creeped out. I had to show my Instagram, but they're happily obliged and posed for me. And I think what I was drawn to them is, at the time I was having my own anxieties of motherhood, and just seeing this unit just, made me feel better. So that's where it started. And as I was sketching and I was crafting it, I wanted it not to be, I decided to remove the background of the setting because I wanted you to just mostly focus on them and not think about where they are. So what I chose instead for the background was to use African print. Now, African print is not just a matter of sort of style in a lot of cultures. Some of the prints have meaning, some of them are just for aesthetic reasons. So the meaning behind this print in particular are two. The flowers, the purple flowers, are my representation of hibiscus. Now, there's a very special drink we have. You can find it in East Africa, West Africa, the islands, and I think they don't say hibiscus in America and the islands. I think they say sorrel. It's like a sorrel drink, and it's basically something you drink every summer when you're going for a picnic, when you're celebrating with friends, and it's very medicinal. It's hibiscus, turmeric, ginger. I usually make it for them. Clears a cold if you're ever interested. But that's something that's drank prominently in parties, so I wanted to feature that flower. And then this particular flower here is a pattern. It's like a reinterpretation. It's like a ginkgo leaf. But this particular pattern itself, that ginkgo pattern, is used a lot in marriage ceremonies, family ceremonies. It comes in different colors, but that print is to signify new birth, new beginnings, marriage, and family. And so I kind of wanted all of that to be within that story. Now, the color choices, there's no deeper meaning when it comes to color. I'm very random with color. I honestly just gravitate towards what I can afford at that time because it's expensive. If I have a lot of yellow, guess what? It's going to be a lot of yellow going around. And also towards this, I guess I like creating things that have a contrast. So most of my colors are going to be, I'm going to be contrasting warm hues and cool hues together. And yeah, I had a lot of fun making this piece. It was a lot of fun. It was my favorite piece. So moving on to that, I'd like to take you to the opposite side of the room. This one, same idea of the use of the matriarchs. And my core memory in life is my aunties dancing around, celebrating, you can already feel them with the moves. And as I said, because the women are usually the head of celebrations in the family. So this was basically my interpretation of capturing that moment of enjoyment. And so I also, when I was making this piece, when I was making this work, I was thinking all about unity, expression, joy, feminine energy. But the other aspect of that is that a lot of the times, fully expressing yourself as an African woman can be difficult because there's certain expectations society has on you, the way you're supposed to look, the way you're supposed to carry yourself. And 100% of the time, that is definitely enforced by the mothers of the family. So I was thinking about, like, where does that come from? Where does this pressure of the strong Black woman, this pressure of, there's a certain way I have to carry myself, there's a certain way I have to wear my hair in order to be respected and accepted in society. And I was like thinking, like, the source of that is obviously colonialism. And this picture, this painting itself, the picture was taken by Elliot Elefison. He was a photographer who took a lot of photos in the 60s, 70s. And this was a huge time in Africa because this is a time a lot of people were gaining independence. A lot of countries were gaining independence. My mother herself was under colonialism. So I am technically the first generation African out of colonialism. My children are second generation. So it's that recent. It's not even, people think about that and think it's like far away. No, it's very recent. There's still people who are alive who are under colonialism and under those pressured beauty standards. So I wanted to look at European art as a source of inspiration, and that's how I have Matisse's painting, but here I've taken out that symbol. And from when I see this Matisse painting, I'm always thinking about, I guess he was in himself trying to express feminine energy of what he understood. So I wanted to take that idea and that symbol itself and use it as a pattern on her cloth. Again, reinforcing the use of African patterns as we use these patterns to commemorate a moment, to represent ourselves and the ideals that we have. And I can imagine this woman, I don't know if you can see the photo, but if you see the photo, then wearing African patterns, yes, but the hair and the style is very European, very Eurocentric. It's very 60s, bouffant. So I thought it would just be interesting to create a world where, yes, even though they're living within those ideal beauty standards, they have turned it into something of their own and created a different language. And that's something I saw my aunties doing a lot and my mother doing. So I wanted to sort of create that language of my own here. And this flower over here, the dancing around this dance stage, I guess, the pattern behind it, obviously I was also thinking a lot about the 60s, a lot of mid-century pattern making and craft making. But at the same time, I wanted to just, create movement and energy. And I'm very happy about this one because it's the first time I stuck to a palette and I was very intentional about the colors I used. Normally I'm not, so yeah. And as you can see, the pattern work is a derivative of the background of that one. And this is a lot of fun making. I enjoyed myself a lot. When I'm composing my work, I like making triangles in moments of focus. So the triangle, the main focus is the child, and the triangle is here, right there. So I did that on purpose to make sure that, you're focusing on what's happening around them rather than the subject. And the same thing there, the triangle is right at the bottom of her shoe, going to her. The middle person is a triangle. I don't know why I do that. My brain just enjoys that. I'm pretty sure there's like some very deep artistic meaning towards it. I forgot my art school days. I know my professors are probably gonna be like, yeah. But yeah, the use of the triangle. So when I'm trying to take you away from the subject and focusing on the action, I make them like look away. So moving forward, from happiness to brightness. So the lessons I've learned there is how to carry myself as a mother, as a woman, and those are lessons I keep on meeting again as I go through life. So moving on to a little bit of a downer, but this piece has been, I've had this piece in my head for years, for a very long time. This piece is, I guess, memories of a negative time in my life that I was not very excited about. Well, not excited is an understatement. But the story is Persephone, like the Greek myth. And I'm just going to do a short synopsis. So in the myth, Persephone gets kidnapped by Hades, and Hades decides to marry her. But Demeter is not happy, obviously, that's the mother. And learns from Zeus that Zeus allowed Hades to marry Persephone. Persephone goes to hell and obviously is not having a great time. She ends up eating the pomegranate, which basically commits her soul to hell. So even when Demeter finds help for her, she cannot stay out of hell longer than, I think every spring is when she's coming out, spring, summer, and winter, fall is when she's there. So I just thought it was a great stage to discuss my marriage. I know, and every time I say that, people are usually shocked, but yeah, there was a very contentious relationship. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of abuse that happened. So I wanted to find a way to synthesize those emotions. It was definitely a tough thing to go through. I'm still working through that time in my life. And my medicine ever since as a child has always been make art about it. And that's why I wanted to put into this exhibition We Meet Again, because for me it's like a cathartic thing creating this. And as I was creating this painting, I was basically just learning from the lessons in that relationship and what I wish I told myself, the strengths I should have given myself as I was there, and basically the pride I have for being able to get out of it whole. So I wanted, so that's obviously me in the painting, but for this one, I wanted it to be like, I always have this nitrous gown thing and my bonnet. I didn't want it to have, I wanted to look like I just rolled out of bed. And I particularly chose this position and the placement and the structure of this painting because I wanted to allude to another painting of Persephone by the Pre-Raphaelites. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but in this painting, the figure is in the same position. She's holding a pomegranate. It's exactly the same placement, except the subject is me, and obviously there's no African print in it. But I chose that painting in particular because when they're creating it, you know, it was considered, the figure in those paintings, the Pre-Raphaelite paintings, were considered like the ideal aspect of the feminine form. So I wanted to just, you know, play with that idea. Because you really, at that time, you never saw, obviously, Black women as the main figure in any painting. So I wanted to resonate with that. But more so, I wanted to, you know, I was playing around with the idea of why is it that many a times women are sort of the main subject, but never have any agency and any control over how they're being depicted. And when I was in that relationship, I felt like I had no agency and control. So when I was making this, I wanted to just play around with those ideas. And this moment I captured was the moment after she bites into the pomegranate and realizes that she has lost control over her life. She is now in control of this man because of the ring that he put on her finger. And because of that, she sort of has lost her freedom. So this is the one to really play with it. I let go at some point and I just decided to doodle, lose control. And by losing control, sort of gaining it back. And you can see at the bottom, it's not, the still life sort of disintegrates and it just becomes like my own doodling, frustrations that I have, comments from art professors. Cool things like don't eat the fruits that is not your labor. That is a Swahili saying of don't take credit for other people's work, or don't be jealous because someone is working hard. It's a saying that's always resonated with me. It's all in your head. That was definitely something that I struggled with during that relationship, especially when you're being manipulated. At some point you think that maybe you're the ones making things up, but not having control of oneself sometimes also leads to, you know, insecurity, and when this feeling of, oh, maybe I made it up, and just sort of that inner dictator in your head sort of takes over. And then if you look closely, if you really look at the background, there's actually old text messages and divorce papers in the background. That's what I turned it, I turned it like you see at the top, and restraining order. So it's a very personal painting. I'm very personal when I'm finally ready to confront things. And because I like contrasting how I work, it also has a fun thing. I like putting dark ideas and like sad things and traumatic events together with bright colors and happiness. So you can actually play with it. If you scan the QR code, the heart comes to life. It's augmented reality. So when you have the chance, go ahead and scan away. It was a lot of fun making that one. So moving on from Persephone, I wanted to come to Saint One, featured by Imani, my model. So the heart comes back over here. So again, we meet again, as we discussed earlier. I'm learning from the past in order to inform the future. And so I was thinking, what lessons would I teach my daughter about what I learned from that relationship so she doesn't have to go through the same thing? Cancel that intergenerational trauma, break that chain. So here the heart is made out of light. And this one was a little bit of continuation of that story, but I sort of step away a little bit, and I just wanted to also play around with pattern making again and color. The background of it is an abstraction of the ginkgo pattern that we talked about earlier. So you can see a little bit over here, and feel free to just get up and look at it if you really want to see what I'm talking about. You can see the ginkgo pattern over here, the ginkgo pattern over here, and again on that sketch, the ginkgo pattern right there. And again, as I said earlier, the ginkgo pattern is a pattern used a lot for marriage and ceremonies. So there, it's sort of a reminder of something I want to escape. And here, it's a reminder of a future of freedom. I hope to wear it whenever they decide if they want to be in a relationship. You guys don't have to think about that too much. It's okay. So yeah, it was just a lot of fun making it. She's the one who posed for me, the baby. It was a lot of fun. And then I'd like to take you to this one, the opposing Saint 2, featuring her twin, Imara. This one was a little bit about, obviously, looking back. And when I was painting this, and I was thinking about, there's this symbol called the Sankofa. Feel free to Google it. And it is usually a bird's neck bending backwards. And it basically means looking back at the past to learn your lessons for the future. And I just wanted to play around with colors over here. I was experimenting with contrasting again. And obviously the position that he's in. And I put them opposing each other because I always feel like the energies sort of represent parts of me that I'd like to improve every time I think about my kids when I'm painting them. So he's a little bit more subdued in general, and she's more excited in general. I don't know. It goes week by week. Sometimes they change. Sometimes they're completely different human beings the next week. But yeah, these two, when I was making it, I was more having fun with color really than thinking about the context and the subject, and more wanted to highlight the pattern work more for these ones. And yeah, I love painting them. So moving forward to the mirror painting. So as I began earlier, we were talking about, we meet again. I'm talking about the past, learning from those lessons. And growing so that it helps as I grow, and looking at the future. And this one is particularly about my anxieties of the future as a mother. And it's something that has really been on my mind this year particularly. As we all know, this year, for a good period of time, no one could go outside. And that, as an adult, I'm like, oh, yeah, well, that's unfortunate. But as a kid, it's like, hold on, my kids can't play. That's the world we live in right now. It's something that you'd think would happen in a dystopian movie, but no, that's happening today. They still don't get to go to recess sometimes because it's too hot. I mean, obviously it's getting cooler, but I was just thinking what type of future, how can I, other than obviously talking about it, being sustainable myself, but just all the things, it's really frustrating when you just sit down and wrap your head around how do you protect your children from a future that is very uncertain. So when I was making this, I was thinking about gun violence. That's obviously a major thing. I have school-going kids, and every time they go to the bus, I'm like, there are parents who took their kids to the bus and they never came out. And that's a deep, deep fear I have. I mean, obviously, I don't think about it all the time, but it's in the back of my mind. Then the other thing that I'm always concerned about is their education. What are they learning in school? We have a lot of ban of books. Book bans are happening all the time. Subject matter, I mean, we all know what's happening in Florida. I'm not going to get into it. The day is nice. I don't want to I don't want to be angry. And the huge one, the big one, climate change. The climate is, the world seems to be on fire or underwater. And, I was thinking, how will they be struggling with these things when they are parents? Right now the scale is going towards yes, but I'm hoping the scale will tip to no. That they will be able to grow in a world that we grew up in. We should not deny the generation of the future. So that's also put in the mirror. So it's a moment of reflection. And again, as I do most of the time, it's a pattern I've noticed. When I'm trying to discuss very heavy subjects, I like to make it fun and bright. Very heavy, but it's palatable. So moving on from that one, Pietà. Now, Pietà was made in 2019. No, sorry, 2021 is when I completed it. I started it in 2019. This one, I made it out of a few reasons. The main one was gun violence and police brutality. That is a discussion I'm going to have with my kids that other parents will not necessarily have with their children. The inspiration for that was the Pietà sculpture, but also it was from a photograph, and I'm forgetting the artist. I'm so sorry. I'll remember the artist, but she's a very famous photographer. Emily, do you know her?
Give me more description.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting. Well, she did Pietà, and in her Pietà, it's a black man and a black woman laying down the same way. Black woman is Mary, black man is Jesus. And so I wanted to do that with my children. I did this when they were around 5 years old. And the thing I was thinking about was all the lives. I was thinking about the mothers of all the victims of police brutality, and not even just police brutality, gun violence again. That I feel like their children become, these murders for all of us to think about gun violence, and yet still nothing has been done. Yeah? Oh, okay. Nothing much has been done. And it's extremely frustrating. So when I was making this, at the same time, George Floyd happened. And I remember in the video, he's also, shouting for his mom. And the pain that, I can't even imagine. I can't even dare to imagine the amount of pain that, he went through, and his mother. I mean, his mother had passed away, but if she was alive, that she would have gone through. So if you look closely at the painting, I have the numbers 8 minutes and 46 seconds sort of plastered everywhere. And that was the amount of time that, George Floyd was begging for his life. And I still haven't fully had that discussion truly with my children, but they're aware. They're very educated. I make them aware about, certain things. And it's just hard. I'm still trying to figure out a way to talk about that this happens, and it's not any fault of your own, but just the color of your skin. You don't look the right way. And yeah, that's a very painful thing to think about, because again, as I say, as we meet again, when I grew up, I was also very much aware about racism and politics. Firstly, because as we discussed earlier, my mother is a first generation of an African who's lived, or was a Kenyan who has lived in colonialism. I'm the first generation, of Kenyan who has lived outside of colonialism. So I grew up very much aware about these things even at a young age. I knew exactly, how to act around certain people, and that sometimes I'll be treated differently and I should not. Obviously, I still felt pain, but as a kid, I was like, oh, when I grew up, this is not going to be an issue. I mean, come on, like, you don't think about that, but still, here we are. Still a problem. We're still discussing it every day. I give it to my children, tiny stories and experiences, and we watch the news sometimes, but yeah, it's tough. And that's the gift of art at the end of the day, At the end of the day, I feel privileged still that I'm able to take all these crazy emotions, all these very, intense subjects, the trauma I've experienced, the lessons I've learned, and weave them together, create my own narrative and story, and share with all of you. And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.